Hello and welcome to another episode of Wind, Waves and Wells with Joe, me. This week's episode is with Nick. I came across Nick on LinkedIn a few weeks back where he was putting out his story about going from being a professional footballer to an oil and gas worker, and it was one that I caught a keen eye for. This is a great episode. Nick dives right into his career and what he's doing now, what his plans are, and some good advice in my opinion. So, enjoy. Hi Nick, welcome to the show.
Hey Joe, how you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks, not too bad. How's things over in Dubai?
Good, yeah, getting hot now this time of year, really hot.
Yeah, so tan's gone through the roof.
Yeah.
Nick, I came across you on LinkedIn. I seen you were basically going through a bit of a portrait of your story. Do you want to just kind of elaborate on who you are?
Yeah, so obviously, first of all, thanks for inviting me onto the podcast. I've seen some of the other podcasts that you've done with some of your guests, really, really interesting guests that you've had on up to now. So it's a pleasure to be invited on. My story, I started off as a professional footballer, or with dreams of being a professional footballer back in the day when I was started up from being 6 years old, and then I went through and I was lucky enough to be named the captain of England under-18 schoolboys international, and then sort of played at the last ever England international ever to be played at the old Wembley before we knocked it down. And then sort of went from there, signed for Morecambe, ended up being a professional footballer, went to live in Singapore as a footballer, got a bad injury, and then sort of took a little bit of time out to sort of see which way I was going to go. Came back from Mallorca where I was living, and then my dad sort of used some brilliant reverse psychology on me because he worked in the oil industry pretty much all my life, and he said to me, you won't last 5 minutes on a rig, son. So I sort of took that. He's either a genius or I don't know, there's probably other words you could use for it, but it worked. So anyway, next thing you know, I'm on a helicopter heading out to Arctic 3 in the North Sea, and then started my journey from there. Just took the bull by the horns. Had a look at see what was going on, challenging early stages of my career, and then from there I was lucky enough to go and get invited to work on one of the first ultra-deepwater drill ships in Samsung shipyard in South Korea. Which is an incredible experience, and that started that part of the journey. And then from there, and then now I'm an independent technical training and competence consultant. I'm wanting to sort of inspire the next generation with my journey and give something back.
Perfect. So that takes away a couple of my questions there actually, but I'm going to ask them anyway. We'll go back to when you're playing football. What was it like captain in England?
It was probably the most unbelievable thing I've ever done. Again, from being a young boy watching my heroes come out the tunnel at Wembley, because I'm a Man United fan by birthright, because my mum's side of the family are from Newneath in Manchester. So it was, I didn't get to choose. It was chosen for me. But it was good when I was young because obviously Man United is successful. It's a little bit different now. But it was probably the most unbelievable feeling in the world because it's something I'd always dreamed about doing. And I knew, I'd been, obviously Man United won the European Cup there. England won the World Cup there. I'd been as a young boy watching Blackpool in the playoffs because that's where I'm from, Blackpool. I'd even been to watch young schoolway internationals on school trips as well. So playing at Wembley, it's sort of been all I'd ever wanted to do. And to actually lead the team out and play there, the last ever game before they knocked it down was an unbelievable feeling. There was a goalkeeping coach who'd been capped by England. He used to call me Skip, and he said to me, "Look, Skip, there's only two feelings you're ever going to experience. One is when you get your first England cap, and the second is when you watch your first child being born." So that was fairly accurate because obviously you're a father yourself, so there's a lot of emotions with that. But it was unbelievable. It was an unbelievable feeling.
How much do you think playing football? How much do you think you took from that, the mental toughness of it, and kick offshore?
Yeah, I mean, one thing football taught me is it's taught me a lot about life, but it teaches you a lot about people, individual people. So having, when you're a leader of people, you probably know yourself. Some people need a certain approach to try and to try and get the best out of them. And I think a captain's job is to know their individual, their team, and how to inspire them to get the best out of them, and how to work collectively as a team. So I think that kind of sort of understanding that you get from being a footballer can be super beneficial, transferring into multiple roles, multiple jobs. But I definitely found my experiences from playing football, certainly being a leader, beneficial when I made the transition over to the oil and gas industry.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Actually, I was actually speaking to someone the other day about like decent leaders, and like what I'm finding in some places offshore at the moment is there's quite young boys being put in quite high positions.
Yeah,
and they're really incredibly clever, and you can't take that away from them. But you notice like their handling of certain personalities probably gets some goals. So we can say that about being a captain.
Yeah,
and understanding different personalities. Yeah, you're 100% right. There is dealing with each individual one, is it? And realizing that you've got to try and get them.
It is. It is a bit, but it gives you that ability to, to communicate, to talk, to actually, find out what the people are like, learn about them. You learn to read people quickly, on a football pitch. And I think that's a very, very valuable skill that's kept me in good stead, for pretty much all of my career and to this day.
Shifting the identity though from professional sport, and obviously going offshore, how did you cope with that?
Yeah, that was it was quite tough at first, because obviously my dream was to be a footballer, and then having to completely shift. I mean, I never really thought that I would end up on offshore. As you said, it was my dad's reverse psychology that sort of paved the path for that. But yeah, it was quite tough, because it was sort of the end of one dream, and then thrown into an alien environment where you've got to learn quick and learn fast. With bottom of the ladder as a roustabout, it's you're basically the ship's cat as a roustabout. So it was a culture shock. It was a big shock, but again, once you sort of get your head into it, you knuckle down and you start to see the opportunities and where you can apply yourself. I met some sort of bad people at the start. Some wasn't great, but I met some fantastic people, and there's some good people there from the start that mentored me. And I remember one guy saying, let's look at the guy over there. That's the OIM. He said he's still away from his family, 3 weeks at a time, same as you. He said, but he's on much more money than you are. So do you want his money, or do you want the money you're earning? Because if you put your head down and work hard, you can earn some good money doing this. So it was kind of, it sort of got my attention. And the guy was right. So I thought, if I'm going to do it, if I'm here, I want to do it to the best of my ability and try and make as much money as I can.
See, because I know I've spoken to a couple of football players. Do you think ego is a big thing to kind of get rid of when you left there? Because I don't know.
Sorry to say, you work in the industry yourself. Egos are everywhere. Some people get put in positions of authority, like you just said, maybe thrust in there too young, or maybe not warranted, or they know somebody or whatever, haven't really done the hard yards. And egos are everywhere. See, again, working offshore is quite a testosterone-fueled environment. You can certainly see that. But again, you've got to respect. I always say this: you're never going to get on with everybody. You don't need to get on with everybody. But if you know what you're doing and you're competent and you work hard, people will respect you for that. And if you're willing to learn and ask questions and, throw your hands up when you're not sure, or if you make a mistake, I think that's what people are looking for, that type of mentality in the industry. Be willing, be keen, be honest, work hard, and if you make a mistake, throw your hands up and move forward.
First trip offshore, how'd you get on with it?
Yeah, it was a funny one, because I remember getting off the chopper, and I went in to see the tour pusher, and I noticed the golden rules of the company was Global Santa Fe. Number 1, do the right thing. Number 2, be the best you can be. Number 3, treat others like to be treated yourself. And I remember thinking, if this is how they do things here, I'll be all right. And I walked in, and the senior tour pusher, a guy called Mal Christie, his nickname was the Colonel, ex-Royal Marine, good guy actually. Mustache, and he just filled his chair, and he had my CV. He says, it says you're a captain here, son. I says, well, I was putting on a bit of a front. I said, well, you'll find out all by yourself if I'm a captain. He said, that's brilliant. I'm pleased to hear it. He said, let me give you a little bit of advice. He said, every single bit of machinery outside these four walls, son, is designed to kill you. And if it doesn't kill you, it'll seriously fucking make you. So watch what you're doing. So I took his advice, but I remember thinking, fucking hell, that's a bit strong. Anyway, went at the pre-town meeting, and one of the guys had a body bag. He says, anyone know what this is? It was all scrunched up body bag. And the guy has a body bag. He said, good, he's right. He said, I don't want to be scooping any bits of you lot in one of these. Now watch what you're doing. So it was
what year is this?
Interesting introduction to Offshore. And then soon as I came out, the crane operator came up to me, the mop. He said, "Make friends without you, you little CUNT." So that was an interesting challenge, but
when was this?
I dealt with it quite well. So,
what year was this that you started that you went offshore?
Well, I'm now 43, so I would have been 21 years ago.
Right, okay, yes, that explains why it was the way it was. Yeah,
yeah, it was a bit rough and ready back then, but that's looking back, I'm actually pleased I learned under those conditions, because what I learned is a lot of how not to do it in some ways. When you're working like that, you think, well, as soon as when I get into a position of senior leadership myself, I'll make sure that I don't ever behave like that towards people, because all they really had to do in reality was speak to me, like a human being. They probably would have got a lot more out of me, but even still through that, you just, the resilience that you've got inside you, that comes to the forefront, and you just get stuck in. And I've always been very driven. I thought, well, again, those words were ringing out. You want to be here for, be successful if you're going to be here. And that was sort of my mantra. So I ended up using the golden rules as my own sort of compass just to drive myself forward. And I thought, well, if you don't want to do it like this, if you don't want to do it right, I'll do it right myself. So that was, like you say, it was full on. There was nowhere to hide, but I'm not the hiding type. So, it was a challenge that I sort of gladly accepted.
Yeah. So you started, obviously, where did you go after next then? How long were you there for?
Yeah. So I started off in North Sea, started as a roustabout. It sort of took me about 3.5 years to get promoted up to Derrickman. When I was at Derrickman, the rig got a contract in Libya, so I went to Libya, and then from Libya it went operational. I think it was about a year, and then it lost its contract, so everyone got paid off. And then from there, I was lucky enough to go to the Cyprum 12,000, which is one of the first ultra deep water drill ships that was ever built in Samsung, and that was what a contrast, from this old sort of manual semi little thing, knackered up grey old rust bucket, to this brand new. These things. I don't know if you've ever been on a drill ship, but these things are that wide. You couldn't kick a football from one side to the other without it bouncing. These things are enormous. So yeah, and because it was one of the first ever built, there was no one really there. There was no one there to show you how to do it. You had to go there and figure it out. So they took the Derrickman early, because the mud system and the volume of the surface pits and the mud pumps and the bulk system, and the shaker area was just absolutely enormous. So you can imagine how many. I think it's like 24 surface pits or something like that on a drill ship, if I'm right, with this including your slugs and your chemicals. But yeah, it's just enormous, massive volume. So you basically had to follow every sort of pipeline and figure out. And I remember the first day I went on there, I remember walking into the pump room thinking, fuck, I think I was a little bit thinking I'd maybe bitten off more than I could chew to start with. And anyway, I was sort of stood. I'd gone up and I was stood, sort of looking at the mud pumps and just taking it all in. And the door opened. This other guy came in, little guy, Donny from South Africa. I didn't know. He had never seen him before. And his face did exactly what mine must have done. He just sort of hit the floor. So I said to him, I said, what's your job? What are you doing? He says, I'm assistant Derrickman. I said, well, I'm your new boss, mate. I said, how do you feel? He said, bro, I'm fucking shitting myself. I said, well, that makes two of us. But I said, listen, look, all we've got to do to be successful, we'll figure out how to move the mud from A to B, and we'll remember how to do it, and we'll just go through it, and we'll remember how to do it. And we did, and we didn't, like I say, it didn't take long for these guys, for Donny and my pump man Callistus to up to speed with it. And they were brilliant in the end. And when I wanted them to be ready for ready for promotion, which meant in turn I'd be ready for my own promotion. So it was 2 years operational in Angola. Great place to learn cycling. They're quite relaxed, the Italians. I mean, it wasn't the best money, but it was a good culture, a good place to learn. So yeah, grateful for that. And then from there, went over, got promoted up to assistant driller. Went over there back to the Samsung shipyard operation with Pacific Drilling, which is Noble's bought Pacific now. But they had 4 drill ships there, and then went operational 2 years to Nigeria on the Pacific Sirocco, and then got offered a job with Seadrill. Went back to Seadrill, and then got promoted up from AD up to driller, and then we did operations in offshore China and then Liberia, and then the rig got this was at the start of downturn, so the rig got warm stacked in Gran Canaria, and then they started saying, look, you need to we're reducing the number of the crew, etc., so we're going to send you to an old rusty jack up in the Congo. And I was like, I will make it hard to to get with the cyber-based stuff and all, on the business end of the ultra-deep water drill ships. And I was a bit reluctant, so I'd seen an opportunity, an advert for a cyber drilling instructor for Maersk Trading. So I went for an interview when I got home, and it's quite a lengthy interview process with Maersk. I don't know if you ever worked for Maersk, but they have quite an intense selection process, psychometric tests, and one interview, come back, and then you do more, and then it was quite intense. But I was quite fortunate. I managed to get offered a job, and the job was actually based in Dubai. So this is my first experience about 10 years ago when I came to Dubai for Maersk Training, and they had a contract with Seadrill, so I was sort of teaching some of the guys I'd worked with before on the simulators, drilling 101 and drilling practices courses and stuff like that. So it was really really interesting, great little job. I was living in Malta at the time, so I was rotating 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So it's lovely having that contrast. And then from there, ended up being let go because that was the downturn. So I was only there for a year. And from there, I went on to Frank's International as the training manager. And then I went from another victim of the downturn there after just a year. That was a good little job there, teaching the casing guys, rig craft from a driller's perspective. I was in charge. It was like a land rig, basically. So I was in charge of that. And then, again, the downturn had an impact on that. And then from there, I met a guy called Graham Eglantine, who was working for drilling systems. I don't know if you're familiar with drilling systems, but they make all the simulators, in all the training centres and stuff like that. So got a job with them, and then from there, that's sort of from drilling systems to IES, who bought themselves out after the management buyout. Stayed with Graham, became a drilling subject matter expert, competency assessor, and then the resident drilling subject matter expert, and then moved into the business support, which was like a hybrid between business development and operations. And then from there, I got offered a job for Vantage as a global training competency manager. And then the last job I had was with ICM Group as the global technical training competency director. So it's been an interesting journey. 21 years. I've sort of had quite a wealth of experience. Been fortunate enough to go and work and operate on different types of all the different types of rigs. Seen all different types of cultures. Worked in some fantastic countries. Been to places. Sometimes I have a look back at my passport and see some of the most random stamps in there from places that you would never ever dream of going if you were just if you didn't work in this industry. So really, really grateful for the life that this industry's provided for me, the experiences that it's given me, the life lessons it's taught me, the cultures that it's exposed me to. So, this is, I say, if there's any people wondering or, thinking about getting into the industry, if you work hard and you apply yourself and, you stick at it, it will give you a fantastic life if you want that for yourself,
Yeah, back to the rigs, because obviously you spend quite a bit of time on it. Is there any memorable moments though from your days there? Any cock ups or any, let's say, moments that you live with that you feel for, without giving away the name of the place?
Yeah. So I mean, look, I've worked on quite a few operations. I think the closest near miss I was on was actually a derrickman up the stick, and it was handover, and it was fairly windy. And anyway, the drillers.
For people that might not know,
What's that?
what's up the stick for people that might not know?
Up the stick, up the derrick, but the monkey board.
Right, yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, so that's a hell of a job.
It's a stick.
Yeah, it's a little bit intimidating when you first do it, you know, when you're leaning out. But actually, it's definitely better to be down on the rig floor once you sort of master it. So you sort of 90 foot up and you're throwing the pipe in, and you know you're throwing it into the top drive for the driller, and then pulling them back. So you get good and strong at it. So I was up the stick, up the monkey board, working the derrick, and it was crew change. And sort of stayed up waiting for my release to come. So obviously he's the last one up. So the driller's obviously changed over, and he was coming up really fast on the top drive, and he was really windy. And he was kind of a freak. What happened? But anyway, the Kelly hose got wrapped behind the bumper bar, which you basically put the big steel bumper bar sort of halfway up, sort of in between the monkey board and the doghouse. And the Kelly hose wrapped round the back of it, and he kept coming, and it pulled it off. Now this piece of steel, honestly, when you're down close to it, when it was down, but anyway, he's pulled it up, he's ripped it off the side of the derrick, and it's come down, and it was the luckiest sort of escape I've ever seen, because as it landed in between, perfectly in between where the rough reds were stood, and if that had hit him, it would have wiped them all out. I mean, that was huge lump of steel. So that's the closest sort of near miss. That's the one that sort of sticks out. And I was looking at the derrick, and I heard, the twang, and I saw it dropping, because he was coming up real quick. And it's very, very lucky.
How long were you down for? 5 minutes, then move off the drill floor, carry on doing it. How long was the downtime for then? 5-10 minutes, get it off the drill floor, carry on.
There was a big safety stand down and all that kind of stuff. It was a big deal. So, but yeah, that was a really lucky one.
Even back in those days.
Mm.
So obviously you're in drilling. What pushes you? How did you find an interest in training in the first place?
Yeah, so basically going back to when I got onto the ultra deep water drill ships, those are NLB cyberbase. That was really, so from a manual, from what I'd seen, to go and working on these NLB cyberbases like a spaceship. Everything's fully automated. You've got 2 chairs for on the auxiliary side, auxiliary side drill floor, and then the main side. So there's 4 chairs up there, and automated rackers, and the top drive, and the pipe skate, and the riser skate, and iron roughneck, and hydrotron they call it. And it's just really, really, impressive stuff when you see it. You feel like you're walking onto the command center of a spaceship when you first see it. But yeah, so going back there, I had some really good mentors that were there, sort of performance coaching, doing what I actually grew into doing. And the guy's name was Mark Kaiser, really, really sharp guy. And he was teaching, the basics of how to operate the equipment and drive the racker and do all this kind of stuff. And and then from that, obviously with my experience growing and my own ability, teaching other guys how to do it. And I've always had a passion for teaching people and watching the light bulb come on and giving people confidence, how to not just operate the buttons, etc., but to be empowered, have the courage and the conviction to make those right choices. And it's something I took a lot of pleasure from. So when the opportunity came from Merst, it was an interesting opportunity. It also kept me hands-on with, the NLV cyber-based kind of stuff, even though it was more simulator-based. But, it's something I've always had a passion for. And again, once you see that impact on people that you're coaching and watch them doing it and see them getting more confident, it's a really good feeling. I think anyone that's in in the coaching and the training competency side of things, I think one of the most common denominators is the pleasure that people get from seeing that improvement or being instrumental in watching people develop, you know?
There's trainers nowadays, like especially when I go do my Bozier or GWOs nowadays and whatnot, a lot of them they've not got the experience. How important do you think it is to be an actual experience-based trainer? How much more does it help?
Well, I mean, look, the experience again. So one of the things that I'm big on, I'm actually got a post that I've prepared ready to go out next week on it, and it's basically the perfect storm. And the perfect storm. So if you look back at when the downturn, that was the longest downturn in the industry's history. It was like 4 years, and then it sort of nearly recovered, and then COVID came. That's another 2 years, 3 years. So during that time, people that got made redundant, with a wealth of experience, coming to the end of their careers, or the uncertainty of the industry, they didn't come back to the industry, especially again during COVID. So there's a huge gap where you normally have that knowledge transfer, that father-son mentality, where you would pass that knowledge on because of the experience. So there's a huge gap now where it's experienced is no longer in the industry. What we've done is we've ended up, putting people, in positions where perhaps they're not as experienced enough as they need to be or should be for that kind of role. Again, the people that mentoring them have also been promoted, so that there's what we call a perfect storm, where there's a gap of knowledge that's definitely out there. And I think one of the jobs that I've done previously is as an offshore performance coach and competency assessor, is to go out to the rigs, and be there to mentor and pass that knowledge on to the newer guys. You can stand there, you can help coach them, you can find out the development areas, and you can impact that on the spot. But I think one of the main things that's very important for that is the companies that have a good solid competence management system with a good solid, really robust competence assessment programs that actually dial in not just to the soft skills of the people, but to the technical skills as well. Are they good at it? And then if it's done properly, what you can then find is you can find the gaps, and then you can action the gaps, and you can make a lasting impact by doing these things properly. And I think there's definitely a situation now within the industry where we're getting into the eye of the perfect storm, where we need to make sure that the people that we've got in these positions are genuinely competent, not assumed competence, verified competent.
Do you think a lot of it's a tick box exercise though, your training side of things?
I think there's legacy attitude like that. I think in some cases, you go back to the Macondo disaster, and from that, companies need a competence management system, whether that was done, as a proactive or reactive. But we need to. Well, it was so some of the ones that I've seen in the industry aren't really, they've been done by sort of people or companies that don't have that offshore experience. So some of these management systems and assessment programs that we've seen don't really transfer properly, and they're not really dialing into the technical capabilities of the crews. So, I think there's a huge demand for that. Especially from what I've seen, is making sure that the guys that are actually doing the job know what they're doing and do it right, and to change the culture of the companies, rather than because if you've got a competent person, a byproduct of competency is safety and performance. If you know what you're doing, you'll do it safely, you'll do it well. So instead of competency being like what you just said, a tick box, something to show the client, if it's at the top of the tree and everyone's singing from the same song sheet, and it's the cultural mindset of the company where competence comes is a priority, then the benefits of that again are good safety, good performance, and that's one of the things that I've been involved in the last few jobs that I've had is changing that mindset, that culture of competency, and where it should be positioned in the mindset of organizations. So I think in some cases there has been a tick box, but I think we're definitely moving in the right direction away from that because, a lot of the clients will look at it and say, this needs to work, this needs to be right. Show me the proof that this guy knows what he's doing. Explain how you can make sure this guy is actually competent to do what he's doing. So I've definitely noticed a big shift from that in that mindset.
Why do you want to pass on your knowledge? Why don't you just go out to Dubai, make an absolute fortune, wrap up shop and go home?
Plastic, yeah. So again, at some point, I've had great mentors in my career. Somebody helped me at one point. I was privileged enough to get, really good mentors who still remain great friends with to this day. And they had the time and the patience to pass on their knowledge to me. It's like, the stuff that I've learned, especially at NOV Cyberbase, or going back to how to figure out the blood system, or simulators. You don't come out the box knowing how to do all that. You have to be given the right environment to be able to learn. Given the right mentorship, the right tools, the right encouragement, and I'm eternally grateful for the mentors that I've had. And I think a big thing for me is to pass that forward and do that for the next generation, because it's a privilege to be able to do that as well. I feel privileged to be able to help people and inspire people. So it's easy. It's a no-brainer for me.
What do the next generation need though? What skills are they needing? What do they need that they might not have at the moment? Because
I think, like you said, going back to that the discussion of the perfect storm, I think we need there's definitely a requirement, because again, what comes into it is cost in a lot of cases. With since post-COVID, post-downturn, a lot of these big companies have learned how to operate on lesser margins. So whether that day rates are spilling out, whether companies have got that got the necessary funds to be able to pump that into the right resources for training, but it's vital, because I think what the industry needs is the boots on deck, the experienced special forces, subject matter experts to increase the knowledge and like I say, pass that knowledge, transfer that knowledge to the next generation, and be there, be visible, be present. Simulation stuff, soft skills. Again, the technology side of things needs to be implemented. Again, I think there was some companies I've worked for, but there was some sort of petition I've seen going on about the quality of the internet offshore. I don't know what yours is like where you are, but it's places where I've been questioned. So it's really questioned.
The Wi-Fi is unbelievable in the wind industry in comparison to, gas. The wind's like totally night and day. You can't. They've all got Starlink, so there's not much complaints on Y vessel but yeah.
Well, but again, it's all right. It's all well good having all the technology in the world, but we need to make sure that you can use it based on the big Wi-Fi and stuff like that. So again, I think there's definitely a gap, or not a gap, but a requirement for that expert knowledge to be transferred to the upcoming leaders of tomorrow.
Do you see if I said like, right, go start a training program, what would you do? If you could start it from scratch, you can do whatever you wanted.
Say that again, Joe.
So if I said to you, like, here's your opportunity, go start a training program, how would you do it, and who would you appeal to most? Would you go straight after the youngsters? Because I think that's where the big gap is now. There's not enough youth coming through. Especially,
I bet it's quite a diverse question, because I think the training needs to be bespoke to the position and to the individual and to the standard. Really, I think one of the best ways to find out where people are is to assess them, assess their competence, assess their knowledge, assess their skills, and then from that, you'll get a good idea, a really good grounding of their technical ability, their knowledge, their safety knowledge, their policies and procedures, their communication skills, which is as you know is massive with toolbox talks and handovers and X, Y, Z. But the actual technical assessment of individuals is very, very important, because that gives you a solid foundation and to be able to pinpoint how you would then develop that training program for that individual. I mean, most companies have already got their training matrices where these are your level ones, which are your requirements that you need to get before you even go offshore, like your BOSIA and your medical and your first aid and your bags and slinger and all this kind of stuff. But then, as you go through the training matrices, the how that is sort of designed should really be based on, the skill set of the position. And then if you really want to fine tune that, once you've done an assessment of the individual, then you can pinpoint those areas. But what you need to do that is a really robust assessment program to start with. If you're assessing and using a program that doesn't dial into that kind of knowledge and technical skills, then if you're not asking those questions or you're not observing those kind of things, you're not going to be able to highlight it and then fix it. So I think the best sort of training programs would all be bespoke and built around the requirements of the individual based on their individual assessment.
How much do you miss offshore?
Say again?
How much do you miss offshore?
How much do I miss it offshore? It's a funny one, working offshore, because it gets into your blood. It's a bit like you still seen the film The Shawshank Redemption when he says first, we see the walls and you hate them, then you start to get used to them, and then you just start depending on them. I think there's definitely some cases that I know. I think my dad became a little bit institutionalized. He got two knees. He had bad knees. He got two knees done at the same time just so he could get back to work quicker. His good recovery time was less. So, but yeah, you miss offshore again when you're there. Obviously, you miss your friends, you miss your family. Obviously, you miss your family first, but you miss your friends, you miss your life, you miss your wife, you miss all that kind of stuff. But it's good because you can reset, you can focus, you can get yourself in good shape, you can eat well, obviously. But and you meet some fantastic people offshore. I met some real characters during my time. So there are definitely elements that I miss offshore as I sort of progressed into the training competence side of things. My rig visits, I wasn't rotating on 4 weeks on, 4 weeks off. So you go up the rig and you spend however long period of time as a performance coach. You could be up to 8 weeks. But in the last job, or one of the last jobs, there was Advantage. I'd go there for 3 or 4 days and visit all the different rigs in the fleet, which was great. So you still get a little taste of it, and half sort of hybrid between being in the office and being at the coalface. So it was. It's something there. It's something that's in you. It's once it's in you, it's in you. I think it's that kind of cool.
Yeah. I think you're right. Actually, whenever I'm away, I'm constantly thinking about going home. But then when I'm at home, I'm like, I'm thinking it's not actually so bad out there, kind of thing. What's the state of the offshore industry? What's the state of the offshore industry?
Yeah, I always remember, before you, the couple of days before you go back when you're buying your toiletries and all that kind of stuff, and you just end up, but then, when you're on the rig and it's chopper's eve and you just raring to go, best job in the world. So
yeah,
it's cyclical, the offshore rotations. So, but yeah, it's definitely something there. Once it's in your blood, it's in your blood.
What's the current state of the offshore industry now, or the oil and gas industry more than anything?
That's a big, deep question. Again, I think we're still having sort of really fully recovered from that big downturn. Because again, when I was back in South Korea, the amount of drill ships that were being built and the steel that was getting caught, I think that I was mistakenly thought I would have a job for life there, in the deep water sort of side of things. And again, I think now the industry sort of found a way to work on lesser margins, lesser day rates. And I think that sort of spills out onto the draw for the guys in the industry. I think, like say, the amount of money that's on offer now definitely wasn't the same as it was, sort of 11, 12 years ago, or whatever. And I think, obviously, I think everybody in this industry would like to see that improve.
You think it will?
So I think the industry sort of, we're moving forward technologically, culturally. There's definitely still that room for improvement, especially related to competency. and training and you know, the knowledge transfer, getting the people that know, that have that skill set, you know, getting them on board, getting them amongst the lads, and transferring that knowledge and driving the standards of competence for the next generation.
What's the difference between working in the UK and the rest of the world, from your experience?
Well, the weather. Yes, I worked offshore, Aberdeen, so I always remember how the closer I'd get the train from Blackpool, I always remember the closer it got to Aberdeen, the more depressed I would start to feel. But yeah, I think in the UK sector, you know, the safety element of things is the best. I think that I've experienced, the outlook for safety. I think when I was working on those rigs there, you know, everyone in the team could do the job above. You know, everyone was ready. There was real high quality of guys that knew what they were doing, which was great. I say the rest of the world, wherever I've worked, all over Africa and China and Indonesia and especially the Middle East. But yeah, I mean, each country I work has its own different sort of different culture. But I think everyone's really, you know, when you strip it down, everyone speaks the same language because they're all there trying to work hard to, you know, to provide for the families, have a good life. I think the guys that are keen and honest and willing to learn, you know, I think you find that in most places that I've been, if they're honest, they're keen, they're hardworking, willing to learn, you can trust them. You know, you can work with guys like that. And I think, again, you know, everyone's there to, you know, try their best and work hard so they can have a nice life. So I think that's the common denominator. But the UK, yeah, I mean, let's say that's where I cut my teeth in the industry. It's where I started, and I always find the standards that were set there sort of stay with you when you work internationally.
So in the UK at the moment, we're doing this energy transition, which is a total balls up, in total honesty, because it's just not going right at all. I don't know what it's like in the UAE. I can't imagine it's anyway. I can't imagine they're doing it because it's their bread and butter for making an absolute fortune. But from the outside in, how do we go about handling this mess that Europe seems to be taking on? Because, like, in the moment, all it is moaning about it. And I put a post up the other week, actually, that did all right. It did the rounds. And yeah, I don't know what they're doing in the Middle East because I can't imagine they're too worried about an energy transition, considering their whole economy is built off the back of oil and gas. But how do we go about it in the UK?
That's a big, I don't know, that's a big question. It's perhaps a little bit above my pay grade. It's from your experience. I mean, obviously, I see the kind of you know, the big discussions that everybody's having, and you know, this energy transition, and you know, the when I was in Aberdeen not long ago for the doing some business development, there was you know, and everyone was scared to death to commit because of this taxation that's coming in and all this kind of stuff, and it just seems to me that yeah, it's a big mess here. I think it was quite sad for me to see, you know, Aberdeen was really, really quiet when I was working offshore there. It was super busy. You know, the city, the town was buzzing, and now it's like it seemed a little bit quiet. I'm just going to charge my phone a second. You see, you know, it seems a little bit quiet, and a lot of the places were very, very reluctant to commit to any sort of budgets for training and competency and stuff like that. And it was quite like, say, that the rigs there were all sort of plug and abandon, which means once they're plugged and abandoned, that's it. That's the end of it, really. So it seemed a little bit sad, really, considering it used to be such a vibrant place. But yeah, the energy transition, again, you know, personally, I'm a little bit skeptical about, you know, the real methodology behind some of this stuff. You know, so I obviously know where the lithium for the batteries comes from, and you know, the non-degradable turbines and all this kind of stuff. So I mean, how green is it, this energy? I don't know. You know, it's
not.
Again, like I say, I mean, if I'm honest, I'm quite old school because, you know, the oil and gas industry, you know, petrol car, keep them, you know, I'll drive one of them until I'm told otherwise. But yeah, it seems like there's been a big, you know, there's a lot of a lot of discussion about it, but what is the real agenda behind it? And it doesn't seem, a lot of the stuff seems to me to not really make that much sense, if I'm honest.
No, it doesn't. Looking back now on everything for your football, offshore training, what's been your biggest surprise along the way?
I suppose the biggest surprise is that most of the changes for me personally haven't come from sort of promotions and titles and all that kind of stuff. I think the changes that have happened to me has come from the people that I've met in the industry, and I think one of the things that I'm most proud of is that when you go into a situation, like I said before, you go into a new role or you've never done it before, you don't know how to do it, and I think there's a lot of satisfaction that comes from applying yourself, putting yourself in front of it, trying your best, figuring it out, and then before you realise it, you actually not only can you do it, but you can do it pretty well. So having that getting that confidence from being able to do that, I think it's very, very important, and it stood me in great stead. As I've gone through the ranks and moved into different roles, actually believing in yourself because you know that you've been able to do it in different positions on the way down. So I think that's a nice surprise. Is actually knowing that you've got the capacity and the ability to do things that you perhaps didn't think you could do or you didn't think you were good at, but once you try and have a go at it, you end up being pretty good at it. So I think that's quite an important personal reflection for me.
What keeps Nick going?
My son. I've got a little boy, 6 years old, Alfie. Up where my eye is. Looks just like me. He's a little rascal. I don't know where he gets that from. He gets that from his mum, doesn't it? Okay, from me.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously, everything that I've done and before he was born. But what keeps me going is, I'm a family man like yourself. But my own person, I've got a fire inside of me. I've always had it. I've always had a drive, a willingness to want to succeed and want to do well. I think that keeps me going. And again, I think when you relate it to work, when you're helping people and inspiring people and seeing a change and motivating people, it's a real blessing and a privilege.
What's one piece of advice? So let's say a youngster comes along, 18-year-old, he's got a bit of interest. What's that one piece of advice you're giving him to try and persuade him into a career offshore?
What did what was my dad's advice? He told me, head down, arse up, do as you're told, he said to me. I said, really? Don't tell me that. I didn't sit too well with you, that one.
No.
It didn't sit well with me at all, so I would definitely wouldn't give that advice. But no. I'd probably say, listen, ask questions, show respect to people, take pride in everything you're doing, whatever it is, big or small. And I think, you do it like that, if you do things like that, somebody will be looking up to you the way that you're looking around now, so if you do things right, take pride in what you're doing, ask questions, be willing to learn, be trustworthy, and try your best. Don't stop trying. Just don't stop trying. I think that would be the advice I'd give to anyone in the journey.
And what's the plan for you now? What does the future hold? What are you planning?
Yeah, so like I say, I've started to become an independent technical training and competency consultant. So my passion now is to transfer my passion, helping organisations, inspiring the people that work for the organisations, helping the training, helping the next generation, developing management systems, assessment programs, training people on simulators, safety leadership training. All that kind of stuff. So that's the stuff that the skills that I've acquired and really most comfortable with now. And I think that's the best way for me to sort of help the next generation is to pass that we've said throughout the podcast, is to transfer that knowledge on and not have it go to waste, and start inspiring the next generation really.
Perfect. So every single person that comes on, I ask the same question at the end, even if it's quite difficult to ask. But if you had your time again and you knew what you do now, would you still go down the same path?
Well, if I'm honest, I wouldn't have got injured. See, I think if being on £300,000 a week, banging in for my learning, all right. Yeah,
that would be good.
I think that's definitely trumps a career in the oil industry. But having said that, though, it's look this career in the oil game. Would I change anything about this career? No. I think the way I've gone through the how I've learned, manually, and the things I've learned or reverse learned and then applied it and stuck in and been resilient and never given up. Kept trying, kept moving forward. Met some fantastic people. Had some unbelievable mentors, which they've inspired me to become one and do what I'm doing now. So the offshore way I've done it, absolutely not. I'm very, really proud of the career that I've had. I'm looking forward to seeing now what the future holds for me as an independent consultant. Looking forward to connecting with new people, looking for new opportunities and that can utilize me as a person and my skill set and make best use to that. So no regrets about my offshore journey, none at all, and the career path like that. But if I hadn't got injured and I could have been on 300 grand a week for Man United, I probably would have stuck to that.
Well, I wish you all the best with whatever comes up in future, Nick, and thanks so much for coming on.
Right, it's been a pleasure, Joe. Thank you for having me.
Cheers, man.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to another episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I took a lot of value from it myself when recording it. Lovely lad, really took a lot from it, and I think he's dead energetic as well when I was speaking to him. So I wish him all the best with regards to his future endeavours in training and that. I'm just going to ask one favour, if it's made it this far and you're still listening, if you could like, share, subscribe, all that towards the show, it would do me a world of good, and I really would appreciate it. Tune in next week where we have another guest, and until then we go again.